Hi there. We're going to try to build some menus that can drop down. Over here, I've got my page. This would be my home page with my links to things that I've built in the class. And I've got my HTML over here. And I've got my CSS styles over here. And I'm in my brackets live view in order to do these things so you can see them as I do them. So what we want to do is we want to build basically a new navigation system. So we're kind of out with the just list of links here with bullet points, and we want to put a piece right below my picture that would look good. If you haven't already done this, this is called a hero image. So you want to find a picture that you can use to make it at the top of your page because it just looks really good to do something like this. And then for me, I was just taking different purples that are found in this nice lavender field and using them as my colors in my style sheet. So what we're going to do, we're going to work in this session on just our HTML with maybe a couple notes on the styles. So what I see here is inside, I have this div, which is what separates, of course, just the main content right here from the background body. And then I have my hero image right here. So underneath that, this is where I want to build my navigation system. In fact, I'm going to make a little comment right here. Oops. That just says navigation here. So that I can work on that. And then at the bottom of all that, I could also just be like nav ends here. You don't have to do that. That's just so that you can see what I'm working on. I won't have to make any changes to anything below it. Although once I have a navigation system, I could get rid of these other links because why have them twice? So what I have to do then is I have to actually build the links. You could actually just kind of copy and paste the links that you have down here because we want them to be the same thing. The main thing we want to do when we build those is that we want to just kind of organize them and think about what the buttons are going to look like or the nav bar is going to look like across the page. So for instance, I'm going to want to have a home button. That's usually most websites have a spot where you can click and get to the main page. Even though I'm already on the main page, it's just good to have that for consistency. So for me, my home link would just be href index because that's this page. And of course, I would close that here. Oops. Yeah, like that. So there's a nice link to my homepage. The other things that I would want is be my personal pages and my tutorials, just like you see here, personal pages and tutorials. So I'm going to make links to those things, but of course I don't have a page that says, here's my, personal pages. I just have the things inside my personal pages. So I'm going to make a fake link by putting that little hashtag in front of it. This isn't a real link. It's just a link to something called personal that doesn't actually exist. But it's not going to get me an error when I do that. So that's a really good way to make a fake link. And then I would also do a fake link for the book tutorials. So I'm going to do tutorial. You can actually call it anything you want since it's fake. And then later on, if you haven't done it yet, you will soon. You're going to make some graphics. So I'm going to go ahead or art. You could call it art. You could call it graphics. But you're going to do some design work in this class. And so why not make a link to that as well while we're at it? So these are, again, the big sections of the nav bar that we're going to see. Actually, I think I like the word graphics more for my words to be shown. And then so those are my like main sections. Now I want to put the actual links to the things that are the personal pages, the tutorials, and the graphics. Notice that, well, actually, I wonder if it's not properly working because it should be showing me a live view right here of the things that I'm typing, and it's not. So hold on one second while we see if we can fix that. Just because I want to have that up here as I go. It's going to make it easier. Well, okay. Maybe this computer isn't working on live view right now. I don't know. I want my personal pages to just be all of these things, so I'm just going to copy them and put them right up here. The only difference is I don't actually want them to be list items. I just want them to be links on their own. So I'm going to delete all the LIs. And if I delete the LIs, I also want to delete the /LIs at the end. Okay, so there's all my lists, and I don't need the /UL anymore. And then the same thing with my book tutorials. Now, there's actually a couple of tutorials that we haven't created yet, so I'm gonna add a few as well. So first, I have my news page. I have my Microsoft page. And then what I could do is just copy them and paste two more. The other things that we do from the book are called semantics. So what's the link to that? You might have to look up your link, but my link is semantics / semantic dash elements HTML. And then I'll just put the word semantics in there. And then the last thing was a travel page about San Francisco. So I'm just going to put the word travel. And I know my link to that one was something like travel / sanfran.html. So then I would have some graphics. Well, I might as well go ahead and just copy and paste those news links again, except this time, what is it that I'm linking to? Well, I had an animated GIF and I had a movie poster. And then I'd have to build the links to those things. So something like, depends where you put them. Maybe you put them in their own folder called art. Maybe you put them in your personal page and you would link to them. But of course, you know where you've put your stuff. You just have to create the links to go there. You can work on fixing the links later. I'm just getting in something to work. So maybe I called mine animated.gif, and maybe I called my movie poster something like poster.webp, or whatever format I saved my movie poster in to work on the internet. Okay, so that's just a big list of links. It might be helpful to indent these links because those were my personal links, and then indent these links because they're my tutorials, and indent these links because they're my graphics. So that is the basic links that I need. Now, how do I turn that into a navigation? Well, so now what we have to do is we have to start making some divisions in our page, some divs, in order to say, here's how the different parts of the page are going to work. So for instance, this entire piece right here, from the top to the bottom, needs a div with a class, and we'll call this class the navbar, because this is like the class that goes around the entire thing. So what do I mean by around the whole thing? I mean I start it before I start doing my links. I come down here where I say I'm going to end my stuff, and I paste it right there. So this div is like everything here. I can even click on this little triangle and hide that, so you can see like I'm hiding all of my navigation inside of there. Now, each of the main categories, so the home, the personal, the tutorials, and the graphics, those are the next level of class. So here I would have to have a div with a class, and we're going to call these the groups. I'm going to call mine navigation groups, nav groups, or just nav group. And for the first one's easy because it's just home all by itself. It's like its own group. So that one I'm just going to go there. Again, I'm going to indent just for clarity. You don't need to indent, but I want to line mine up as good as I can so you can see them. So now that we have that, I can copy and paste because, in fact, I'll just copy that whole line. Because now every time I have a new menu item, I would put in a new nav class. So I have my personal. I have these things inside my personal. And then that's where I am now done with that div. Oops. I forget that it does it for me. And then same with tutorials. We need a group, a navigation group around all of those tutorials. So I'm going to put a div class here called nav group. I'm going to indent all of these things to make it look good. And then when I'm done with the tutorials, I am going to close. Oops, that's not the right button. I'm going to close that div. And then finally for the art, same thing. So I'm going to make a nav group. And that group is going to be all my art things. And then when I'm done with those, I can close that group. It's almost like having a list of things. I'm just doing a list inside divs because then I can tell it how to behave. Now I can tell my CSS how to make my navbar behave, how to make my navigation group behave. And then there's one more thing, which is, nope, sorry, there's two more things. There's one more div we have to do, which is that every time we have a subcategory, so there's no subcategory in home, it's just home. But in personal, I've got these three things. So they need to have their own class. So now I have to add a new div here. Div class, and then these are just the items in the drop-down, so I'm going to call these nav items. And they are going to close at the end of each line. All right. So I've put just the navigation item. Now I don't have enough room, of course, to make this look too clean. So maybe if I extend this out a little bit, you can see what it looks like. But it's that each item in my subcategories has a nav item on it and a div at a closed div at the end. So once I get that, it's really easy to just copy and paste everything. My tutorial, I have 4 items that I want to put in there, so I just have those 4. Each of those needs a closing tag. Why did it move it over like that? And so then I can just copy and close all my divs there. And then finally, I have the same thing for my art category. I have one here, I have one here, and I need to close them. All right, we are almost done. 2 more things left. This is just a strange thing. It turns out that in order to make these navigation groups work exactly the way we want them to work, we have to turn them into buttons. The button HTML, it would be a spot normally where maybe you're filling out a form and you want to hit a submit button when you're done. So something that's basically clickable, but it's not quite the same as a link. And so we just have to make these buttons so that they can turn into the drop items that we need. So I'm just going to call them a button with a class of drop. And I have to close that button at the end of these. So it's like each of the subcategories is a nav item. Each of the main categories in the group is a button called drop. So I'm going to put that here on personal. I'm going to put that on tutorials. I'm going to put that on graphics. Remember that if I'm going too fast, you can always pause the video and catch up and just look at what I have on the screen in order to make it match. So there is everything. A nav bar around the whole thing. Each category listed into groups. And then buttons for my drop-down items. And the things inside the drop-downs are all nav items. So that's how that works. And after this, we have to change our CSS in order to make it actually work. So that's what will come next.